Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, lots of Brexit amendments being voted on tonight. Over to Cathy in Westminster.
Thanks, Krish. And the government has, in the last few minutes, won the first vote tonight, seeing off a Labour amendment with a majority of 83. Theresa May saw off one rebellion by accepting an amendment from a Conservative MP to protect EU citizens' rights if there's no deal. Yesterday's promise of a vote on delaying Brexit averted another defeat. But across the Channel, the French President Emmanuel Macron warned there's no way the EU would accept an extension to the Brexit timetable without a clear reason by Britain. Our political editor, Gary Gibbon, is with me. Is there any sign of an emerging consensus from those hallowed portals?
Consensus feels like a word that belongs to a different era, a split House of Commons above a split country. What we did get today was some of the drama taken out of what was meant to be one of our date with destiny House of Commons days, because yesterday Theresa May was tipped off by the whips that she was going to lose a vote here by around 50. And so she did this giant U-turn. She allowed for the possible delay of the Brexit date, and she also allowed MPs a chance to rule out no deal with a vote in the House of Commons. Yesterday we were watching the ERG, the Brexit, pro-Brexit Tory group, being all rather sanguine, laid back about that. Destiny is ours. There'll be a no deal even at the end of an extension. I think Andrew Leadsom, the leader of the House of Commons, in an interview with you, we're going to see later, kind of suggests something similar. But you're seeing some other voices around today. Remainers saying, well, no, actually, the extension will not be used if it happens just to twiddle thumbs, tweak the Theresa May deal and then wait to fall off the cliff as they see it into no deal. It'll be a period during which the House of Commons is tested and votes for what sort of solution it wants. What they mean is that we would end up with a much softer Brexit and potentially another vote of the House of Commons to rule out no deal even at the end of the extension. We also had key voices from Europe suggesting that an extension wasn't a straightforward matter at all. So 30 days from the expected date of Brexit, you have to say we are absolutely none the wiser.
Today in Paris, the first public EU response to Theresa May's announcement that Britain might seek a delay in Brexit. President Macron, meeting Chancellor Merkel, said Britain would have to make it clear why it wanted it.
Si les Britanniques ont besoin de davantage de temps, nous pourrons examiner une demande d'extension si elle est justifiée par de nouveaux choix des Britanniques. Mais nous ne pourrons en aucun cas accepter une extension sans une perspective claire sur l'objectif poursuivi.
It's clear that it's not going to be good enough to say to the EU, we're in a terrible mess, we can't agree on anything, can we have another 3 months to carry on fighting and failing to agree some things? We may need to have then a clear plan for Parliament to start voting on other things and discovering where the majority lies.
Because an extension could easily mean polls of members of Parliament, which ends up with a softer Brexit.
Yes.
The frenzy in the street outside Parliament up a notch again today in expectation of key votes. But Theresa May killed off potential upsets yesterday with U-turns giving MPs the power to demand a delay on Brexit and to veto a no-deal Brexit. The ERG pro-Brexit group reacted with studied calmness to that, and whips detect a softening of resistance in this group to Theresa May's deal.
The whole premise and principle of Brexit is based on hope, not fear.
Much rests on the Attorney General and Brexiteer Geoffrey Cox. The government hopes he's their secret weapon, capable of convincing Brexiteers that EU legal clarifications mean the backstop is not forever.
His kite mark would mean a lot to you and a lot of colleagues, you think?
I think it carries a lot of weight, because what we've been worried about, those of us who voted for Brexit but didn't vote for this deal, is the legal implications of that withdrawal agreement and the lack of legal assurances that we can get out of it at some stage.
Geoffrey Cox comes back and says something that carries so much more clout than
You can bring a lot of MPs along.
Oh yeah, because he has so, in a way, he's just that arm's length figure. He has so much more clout than just, you know, one of the rest of us, who everybody thinks we've got some, cunning conspiracy plan up our sleeves. With the Attorney General, that is not so.
The other main prong in the government efforts, winning over the DUP's MPs, in the hope their conversion would bring a big chunk of the ERG Brexit-supporting group with them.
It's not a homogenous group. There are some who will say, look, the deal is a rotten deal and there is no way we're voting for it, end of.
Die in a ditch brigade.
Yeah, that's right, and I respect their view. I'm not a die in a ditch brigade. I'm a businessman, or used to be, and so I'm a pragmatist. And my view is that if the DUP are happy, I'll be happy.
Pro-referendum campaigners in town to watch Labour pivot tonight to their policy. No fanfares are expected from a Labour leader who is not an enthusiast. The third prong of the government plan is to win over Labour MPs to make up for die-hard Tories who'll never back the PM's deal. On all fronts, the government feels it's making progress, but is not yet in a winning position.
Well, a few minutes ago, I spoke to the leader of the Commons, Andrea Leadsom, and I began by asking her whether, as reported, she thought the behaviour of Cabinet colleagues who went public to force the Prime Minister into a U-turn was appalling.
Well, you know, all government colleagues need to abide by collective responsibility. The Prime Minister is at the end of a very lengthy and complicated negotiation, and we need to stick with her and help her to get her deal over the line.
Why weren't they sacked then? Because they didn't abide by collective responsibility, did they?
Well, I think, you know, the Prime Minister recognises that there are some very strong views, and it's quite clear to everybody that the government needs to work together to ensure that when we bring back the meaningful vote by March the 12th at the latest, that we actually have the best chance of getting it over the line.
Were you so disgusted by their behaviour that it's reported that you cried? Is that true?
Well, number one, I don't comment on Cabinet. Number two, I didn't cry. And number three, if I'd been a man, no one would have said I cried. It's because I'm a woman, so I consider it to be an entirely sexist comment.
Well, to use a less sexist word, then, were you angry with them?
I was, but I'm not going to comment on Cabinet.
Are you surprised, though, that they're still in the government?
Well, you know, as I say, we've all got to pull together. We've got to make sure that we help the Prime Minister to get the deal over the line. This is incredibly important for our country. And so at the moment, we need to stick with the game plan that the Prime Minister has put forward.
But if the Prime Minister can't get that deal over the line, as is entirely possible, do you then vote for no deal, or do you vote to extend Article 50, you personally?
There's no doubt we prefer to have a deal. But on the other hand, if we extend Article 50, it doesn't change anything. It doesn't take no deal off the table. As the Prime Minister has said time and time again, in the end, you either have to vote for a deal or you leave with no deal. And I can't for the life of me see why extending Article 50 would help in any way at all.
But is no deal still the default option? Even if MPs vote against no deal, they vote against extending Article 50, they vote against Theresa May's deal. Is no deal then still the default option?
Yes, I mean the legal position is that the EU Withdrawal Act means we will leave without a deal on March the 29th.
But the government's own report yesterday said that no deal would cut economic growth by up to 9% in 15 years and food prices would go up. I mean, it painted a pretty dark picture, didn't it?
Well, you know, what it was a fair assessment of the independent forecasts and the short-term impact on prices and so on. But as the Prime Minister herself said, ultimately the UK would do fine. We have a very strong economy, we have high employment, we have fantastic foreign direct investment, we have enormous potential for our future outside of the European Union. But no deal is not ideal, and it's not what I want. I want us to leave with a deal.
What would be the maximum delay to Brexit you would be prepared to sanction?
Well, you know, as I say, I don't think we should be extending Article 50 at all.
But if you're forced to, what is the maximum? Are we talking a couple of months, or would you be prepared?
I would have to cross that bridge when I came to it, because it would depend on the parameters for it. So if it was simply to continue with this backwards and forwards, there would not be any point in extending at all. If there were some new news or some new potential for some new negotiation, then that might be different, but there isn't at the moment, and that's very unlikely to happen.
Can you see any circumstances in which you would back a year-long delay to Brexit?
I can't see any advantage to it, and if there were no advantage, I can't see why I would support it, no. But as I'm trying to explain, it depends on the circumstances at the time.
But would that be a matter of, would you put your cabinet job on the line in that scenario?
I'm not holding any, I'm not doing any of those sorts of, if this happens, I'll do that. I absolutely heartily disapprove of that. I am supporting the Prime Minister to get her deal through. I've been absolutely scrupulously loyal to the Prime Minister, and she has been absolutely scrupulously faithful to her word. She is determined to get a good deal for the United Kingdom and for our EU friends and neighbours, and she remains determined to do that, and I remain determined to help her.
Andrea Leadsom, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, in the last few minutes, the last vote of tonight, an SNP amendment ruling out no deal in any circumstances, has been defeated by 36 votes.
Well, let's move on to Labour's handling of Brexit now after more voting in the House of Commons. And there seems to be a bit of rowing back on Labour's plan of earlier in the week to support a second referendum. Jeremy Corbyn had been expected to make that his first choice option if Labour's amendment was defeated tonight, which it was. But instead, he said that while he would back a public vote, Labour would also pursue other options.
Some in Labour may think the writing's on the wall tonight, that their party will join this campaign for a second referendum. But that isn't quite the message their leader's projecting.
The ayes to the right, 240. The noes to the left, 323.
This evening, Parliament said no to Labour's alternative Brexit deal, so will the party now say yes to a public vote? That is the sequencing some were expecting.
If this amendment is defeated and the Prime Minister refuses to negotiate a close economic relationship, Labour will support or put forward an amendment in favour of a public vote. That public vote would include an incredible leave option and remain.
You can see Jeremy Corbyn's right behind him, but not necessarily in agreement. In a statement tonight, the Labour leader said the party will back a public vote, but also continue to push for other available options that he's not ready to give up, including an alternative Brexit plan or a general election, as he tries to appease others in his party.
There are a number of colleagues in the Parliamentary Labour Party and in the Labour Party more widely, let alone amongst the millions of Labour voters who voted leave, who do not support a second referendum. What we need to make sure, in my opinion, is that we get a deal that works for the UK, and I think that's what everybody should be focusing their minds on in the few weeks we have left.
There was trouble advancing on Theresa May tonight too.
The ayes to the right, 502. The noes to the left, 20.
Those numbers mean over 100 Tories rebelled on a separate vote, refusing to endorse the Prime Minister's promise yesterday that MPs will be able to delay Brexit. As one cabinet member told me, it might be better to leave with no deal.
If a short extension enabled some dramatic improvement, then I would consider it. But I don't believe that to be the case. So my personal view is that extending doesn't take us any further forward, and all it does is to increase the uncertainty that people are already beset with. So I think in the end, it may be the case that we would have to leave with no deal.
So as Parliament goes about its business, the rest of us go about ours. Still no clearer as to our future in 4 weeks' time.
And Paul joins us now. Paul, are we... I don't know, we seem to ask this every night about clarity. Have we got any clarity tonight on what Labour's position really is?
I'm not sure there is one Labour position tonight, to be honest, Tom, but the Shadow Chancellor, John McDonnell, has been speaking to Robert Peston on his show, which is on after the news, and has been saying that there will be an amendment put forward by Labour calling for a second referendum as soon as that second meaningful vote is brought back on the Prime Minister's Brexit deal. And John McDonnell has said that he wants Remain to be on that ballot paper. No such crystal clear clarity from the leader's office, though, this evening about what their priority is going to be here after a pretty chaotic night in the Commons this evening. Such is the complexity and the number of votes on evenings like this that apparently some Conservatives didn't even know which way they were supposed to be voting, including, allegedly, the Prime Minister. What has been clear, though, from that side of the Commons is that there are many, many Conservatives who do not want this delay to Brexit. So no big moment here this evening, but I think several have been set in train.
OK, Paul, thank you very much.
There have been more parliamentary developments on Brexit tonight. The government won a huge majority for its plan to offer the option of a delay on Brexit. Meanwhile, the Labour Party's plan for an alternative deal was, as expected, rejected by MPs, leading Jeremy Corbyn to declare the party's position is now to support a second referendum. Well, in a moment, we'll hear from the Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, but first, our political editor, Nick Watt. PM has faced another Brexit rebellion in the Tory party tonight,
yes,
we mustn't forget.
Yeah, I would say this is a moment of opportunity and a moment of peril for both leaders. So, as you say, the Jeremy Corbyn plan comprehensively rejected, so he then talks about moving to the next phase, which is the second referendum, but indicates that he's in no rush to do that because talking about still exploring other Brexit options. Now, if he goes slow on a referendum, the Remainery side in his party will be upset, just as the Leave side were upset when he appeared to large up a referendum second referendum earlier this week. For Theresa May, as you say, her concessions potentially extending Article 50, that was comprehensively supported today, 502 to 20 votes, but there were 20 Conservative rebels and a further 88 Conservative abstentions, which means a third of her parliamentary party are unhappy. And if they could find common cause with Labour, then she's back to where she was when she had that heavy defeat on her plan.
Thank you. Nick, we'll be hearing more from you in a moment. But one of the key Brexit concerns has always been the impact of a no deal on our health services and the ability to procure vital medicine and supplies. Newsnight has learned that the Royal College of Radiologists believes a no deal would make it more difficult to treat cancers, and there could be a prioritisation process, meaning some patients would face delays in their treatment. Earlier, I spoke to the Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, and began by asking him if no deal was still on the table tonight.
I very much hope that we don't have a no-deal Brexit, and the best way to avoid that is, of course, to vote for the deal that the Prime Minister has brought back as amended with the work that's going on in negotiations right now.
Let's say the House does not vote for the deal. Would you expect and want the government to whip against a no-deal Brexit?
Well, that'll be a decision for the government if we get to those circumstances.
What would be your preference? Would you like to see it whipped?
Well, my preference will be not to be in those circumstances because a meaningful vote has gone through. But it is a matter for the government at that time if that circumstance comes to pass.
You know how damaging a no deal would be to patient services, to patient health. For example, we've just heard from Richard Graham, the radionuclide lead for the Royal College of Radiologists today, says no deal makes it so much harder to deliver our services and increase costs, whatever the case. It will make it more difficult to treat cancers. We'll have to have a prioritisation process of who we treat first. Some cancer patients are going to suffer, according to this professional, under a no deal.
Well, my message very clearly to those who have cancer is that we have arrangements in place to ensure that whatever the Brexit scenarios and circumstances, we can get the medicines in that are needed. That's something that we have to plan for, whether we want no deal to happen or not, because it is something that could happen.
This week you gave lots more details about how you're going to ensure medicine security and a security of supply. Who's paying for that?
Well, largely the costs have been borne by the pharmaceutical industry in terms of ensuring that there is continuity of supply. They've done an amazing job, given what we've asked them to do over the last 6 months to make sure that they build stockpiles and make sure that there are alternatives to bring the products into the country in case there's a jam at the Dover-Calais crossing. The taxpayer has also paid some money towards that, about £11 million approximately at the moment.
£11 million already?
Yes, and in the department we spend money on things that we don't want to happen, but are important contingencies to keep people healthy and safe. We do that all of the time to prevent against, for instance, pandemic flus and other problems. And in this case, obviously, a no-deal Brexit without any planning would have had very serious consequences.
Can you confirm that no extra costs that would be associated and are being associated with the possibility of a no deal will be put onto trusts?
I suppose I can confirm that because those costs have been absorbed by the department. But in a way, trusts also spend money trying to mitigate against things that we don't want to happen in case they do. So that is the current position, is that it's the national NHS and the department that have borne the costs of this planning. But of course the whole NHS is working to ensure that people can be healthy in all Brexit circumstances. That is part of the job of the health service, to make sure that whatever happens, they can do everything they can to keep people healthy and safe.
So can you guarantee patients, Health Secretary, patients will neither have to wait longer for treatment or wait for drugs any longer because of the possibility of a no deal?
Well, we are confident that if everybody does what they need to do, then there will be that unhindered supply of medicines, and therefore there won't be that sort of interruption. Now, the word guarantee is not one that we use in the health service, and the reason is that all sorts of eventualities come to pass, and the job of the health service is to deal with those as well as they possibly can. But what we're confident about is that because of the work of the NHS, and because of the work of the pharmaceutical industry, who have really risen to this challenge, then so long as everybody in the next few weeks does what they need to do, then in the event of a no-deal Brexit, which I don't want to see, then that supply will be unhindered.
Matt Hancock, thank you very much indeed. Well, I'm joined now by Labour's Shadow Business and International Trade Minister, Bill Esterson. Thanks very much for joining us. First of all, tonight, can you confirm Labour's position is to back Remain in a second referendum?
Yeah, well, it's really important that we make sure that no deal is taken off the table. We saw a vote moving us a step closer to that tonight. But we're also trying to make sure as best we can that the disaster of the Prime Minister's deal with all of the uncertainty doesn't happen either.
But your idea about customs unions has been voted down anyway.
Yes, it has. The next step in our conference resolution is to support an amendment for a public vote. That is absolutely correct.
And in that case, also the decision is to back Remain in that public vote.
Well, we don't know what would be on the ballot paper. We assume that it would have to be between Remain and some Leave option, and I will certainly campaign for Remain as I did before. But look, we also leave on the table the option of a close economic relationship with the European Union, which business and the trade unions are arguing for, and we have been all along. So we're keeping our options open.
But what are you going to say to the millions of Labour voters who backed Leave?
Well, we've honoured the result of the referendum as best we can. We don't have the numbers in the House of Commons. We lost by 83 tonight when we put our proposal for Brexit forward. We've got to move to the next stage. But look, we are open if there is another opportunity in the Commons to push through a close economic relationship, which the business community is calling for, that addresses the terrible problems of a shortage of drugs that we've just heard. And I didn't think Matt Hancock dealt with that at all.
But if there was another option on the table apart from
it,
Remain, you would support that. If there was a customs union and as close as you could be to the single market, you would support that rather than Remain?
Well, our conference policy is to look at keep all the options on the table. So we're keeping the option. We've moved on to the point now, because our position of a customs union single market deal has been rejected, of supporting an amendment.
But you might flip back if in future time, after perhaps a delay, you get...
Well, there's no guarantee we would win a vote on a second referendum. So we have to keep the options open, because at the moment there's no majority for anything, is there? I mean, that's the reality of where we are in Parliament.
You talk about a second referendum, People's Vote. Will you be alongside Tom Watson on the People's Vote march on March the 23rd?
Well, I've no plans to be at the march, but look, we will be supporting an amendment when the time comes. I don't know whether it will succeed, and as I say, I think the right thing to do is to rule out no deal, try and defeat the disastrous deal the government are putting forward, and find a way forward that keeps us close to the European Union.